A Way Out is probably one of the most intriguing and enjoyable, I think, just gaming experiences I've had probably ever. Um, some of you might know, have heard about this game previously. It was announced probably about a year ago at an EA press conference, and the developer of the game originally made Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, which was kind of a game with two characters, but they were actually being controlled by the same person. A Way Out, the new game by that creator, you still have control of two. There's still two characters in the game, but actually you have to play the game co-op, and so each person plays each character. So the two characters are Leo and Vincent, and just like as a backstory, this kind of takes place in like the 80s or so, and both of these guys are kind of like con men, and they both are getting thrown into prison for one of them was for murder and one of them was for something else, or can't remember the exact. I think it was probably both for murder as they get in. But when you're in jail, they find out that, hey, both of these, like, we're in here responsible for them from the same guy. Basically, they're both kind of framed and both kind of set up by the same guy. So that's kind of just like a little bit of a premise. And so the game is always split screen. And that's one thing that's also really intriguing about it, is even though if you're playing just with another friend, or even if you're playing online with somebody, the game is always split screen, so you are always seeing what the other person is doing. And it works really well just from transition to transition. So like if one person's talking to somebody and another person is, sneaking around trying to solve a puzzle or whatnot, they actually shift the size of each player's screen so that you can easily see, like, very cinematic, I guess, is like what I'm trying to say. The game's been out for quite a while, and I guess quite a while, as in probably about like 2 months as I'm recording this. So I'm kind of recording this a little bit late. But one thing I really wanted to do is not too much talk about the individual like aspects and presentation, gameplay related things, though I might actually get there at some point. But I really just want to talk about the best moments, and then also talk about kind of the ending and the story and such. So as you can probably see by the title of this video, there will be full spoilers. And so I've just kind of made a list of some of the best moments in the game, and I'm just going to try and run through that. So, yeah, again, as previously stated at the beginning of the game, your two characters, Leo and Vincent, are in prison. And speaking of the title of A Way Out, they are trying to escape. So it is very much remind me a lot of the movie. I mean, there's a good amount of like prison escape movies, but definitely reminded me of Escape from Alcatraz, where I just remember, like, I think it was like Clint Eastwood was in that, where like they're finding tools and they're trying to chisel out like areas, and I think the big one was like they chiseled out behind the toilet, which that's actually how these players, how Leo and Vincent also escape. So they escape, but then they, proceed forward to try and get out. But then they realize, hey, like, we need to go do something else also. So then they have to come back, and they're kind of just making progress little by little. And that game does that really well. So you have a part where you guys are back to back. You've gotten out of your cell and you're trying to climb up this, not necessarily an air vent, but that kind of thing. And you get all the way up there, but you can't open the cage that's above you because you need this certain wrench. So they have to come all the way back down, back through all the place that you've already been to, and then start the next day and be like, okay, now we have to find a wrench and somehow smuggle it into our cell so that when we can go back and do the whole thing over again. Probably the biggest part is when you're actually in the prison is, as I mentioned, chiseling out the kind of toilet that you're at. And you're kind of, you have like a screwdriver and you're chiseling out behind the toilet. You're doing unscrewing things. And Leo and Vincent are both in the same cell right next to each other. So one person has to kind of be on the lookout for guards, being like, hey, like there's a guard coming. So then, you stop chiseling and just kind of start doing whatever you want. And then the other person can also kind of distract the guards coming by and end up saying like, hey, what are you doing? Like, how long are you going to, whatever it is. Basically trying to distract the guards while the other person does it. and then you guys switch sides and do that. And it can kind of be kind of tense because the police officers that are like guards that are walking, they do have a pattern, but every once in a while they kind of just deviate from that pattern a little bit, where it's like, okay, when I was going to come here, but then he kind of does something like, wait, like, you know, he's actually doing something different this time. And that's enjoyable. So the prison escape is another the big sequence in the game where you're basically like running through the forest. Eventually the siren goes off that, hey, and then people start chasing after him and whatnot. Just another also like very cinematic kind of action. And this is one of the moments where you actually get to a bridge, and one of the kind of gameplay moments in the game that I like is you can either to choose two different courses of action, but both players have to agree on one. And so the player I was playing with, we either could go underneath the bridge, but it could be like risky, or we could try and, you know, take out some of the police officers that were guarding this bridge. So we both decided to go under the bridge and did our whole thing. And it really is a completely different kind of setup another time that you do it. So you're almost kind of wanting to go back and actually try out those other sections, because there's, you know, little hidden things and little details and whatnot that are hidden in those sections that you just will not see at all. And just kind of to you know, like deviate from that a little bit, like this game is full of detail. And I don't mean just by like the textures of like, oh, you can see the cracks in the pavement or something like that. I mean just a lot of people are, you can talk to them. There's just multiple conversations that you can have. There's just things in the environment that you can pick up or interact with. There's a lot of little games that you can play with each other. Like there's one later on where you're playing baseball and one person's throwing and another person's trying to hit it as far as they can. There's horseshoes. There's one in a hospital where you guys are sitting on wheelchairs trying to like lean back and trying to balance this wheelchair. Another one I'm thinking is there's a Connect 4 part where like you can play Connect 4 with somebody, or you can also do arm wrestling. Like I could just go on and on. There's so many cool little things to interact with in just every environment. So like even when it's the kind of like, hey, we have to go do this right now, it's like, no, like I want to go look at all of these other cool things. And I think that's definitely where this game shines so much, are those little moments. There are some references to Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. There's part where you're sitting on a bench and you actually hear the voices of the two brothers from Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, and they're kind of making a joke about like, I don't know, like there's two kids playing, like, oh no, they might be brothers. So I love those kind of little references as well. And so the brothers escape prison. They get some separation from the cops, and they kind of walk you around the wilderness and whatnot, and you have a little bit of a gameplay section there. But eventually they get to a farmhouse, which is a really good section where you have an older couple, like kind of like grandma and grandpa, and eventually you either subdue them or get them out of the house because you're trying to get a car and you're basically trying to get out of there. But when they're kind of subdued or they're actually not in the premises, you can roam around this like whole farm and pet chickens and pigs and horses, climb up a windmill. I think that's also like where you play horseshoes. There's just a lot of cool things to do. And there's two other main ones that I wanted to touch on that are both, I think, actually trophy related things. So in the kind of main dining area in their house is a banjo and a piano. And if you pick those up, you actually start playing. It's kind of like a little miniature, like Guitar Hero kind of thing, with the like 4 face buttons. And if you end up hitting, and both of you end up hitting enough notes, like at the same time, they end up playing this kind of gig, like right there in the like living room. And it's super cool, as just like the music's kind of cool, and they're both kind of like jamming out and whatnot, and it's a really cool moment. And then there's another spot where there's a like hidden switch behind a bookshelf or something like that. That like usually it doesn't even come up, I don't think, with an on-screen prompt. So like it's really, how are you supposed to know that kind of thing? but it unlocks a door up above the stairs, and you basically go in, and I think it's either Leo or Vincent can do it, and you open up the chest, and he pulls out a sword, and then like turns around and like holds it up in the air, kind of like Legend of Zelda, like when you open a chest and you get an item. And then he's like, well, I don't need any use for this. And he like throws the sword behind him and it lands back in the treasure chest. And of course, I think that's tied to another trophy as well. So again, it's just the little touches that makes it really cool. So you end up going into the garage at the farmhouse. You get a battery. You start the whole thing up. And that's eventually when either the old couple come back from when you've diverted them, or they escape. And escape like your captivity or whatnot, and the police get alerted, and that's when you drive off into the truck. So this is one of the other cool co-op moments that some games have done before, but just nothing just this effective. So one person is driving and then one person is shooting. In my section, I was Vincent and I was driving, and I believe Leo was shooting, like in the back of this truck with a shotgun. So it's a thing where they're pretty ruthless, like the police cars chasing you. And so Leo is shooting to try and keep the police cars off. But if Leo starts missing some shots, the police cars are going to start ramming into the truck. And it's going to make it even harder for Vincent to drive. So when my friend was missing shotgun shots, it made it even harder for me to drive because the police cars were ramming into it. Whereas, if he was shooting the police cars, it would have been a little bit easier for me to drive. So it's very much like, hey, it's kind of a team kind of aspect, even though with two people. If one person fails, then kind of the whole thing is getting kind of demolished or whatnot, the whole plan. Eventually, that car gets totaled. You end up finding a boat, and so now you have a boat rowing section. And I remember talking to people in my previous podcast I used to do before Colin and Curtis in the Morning, or Crossplay. It was our PSN Stores podcast, and we talked about a boat rowing section in Brothers. And I remember one of the members there had trouble rowing the boat. And so there's another boat rowing section in this game, and it is not very good. So you're trying to dodge rocks. You're trying to, stay with the white, you're basically rafting on like white water, and it's just going really far. And so both people have to kind of be steering like the same direction. It's kind of like one of those Mario Party mini games where like, oh, well, both people on the left have to be doing it and both people on the right have to be doing it. And it's just really frustrating because that's really the only time in the game that actually happens. So it's just kind of a one-time thing and done. Which I do appreciate, because there are so many of those moments where, hey, you do this one thing and you don't really do it again, but there's nothing really like it ever again. So each little chapter and each little experience is really kind of their own thing. So it's not like you do one thing and then like, by the end of the game, we've already done this like 20 times. So it's a nice little thing that kind of breaks up the pacing for that. So you end up finding Leo's family. This is also the part where you end up like playing baseball, or you can play basketball, things like that. So you end up chasing after one of the guys who set you up. This is who you're trying to find. You're kind of fighting his like right-hand man, and you have this big old chase through this construction site that was really well done. So you're both kind of like taking different paths sometimes. So like one person can be up high or running along this beam, while another person's running through just like another work area and whatnot. It's just like really fast paced, and it really is just kind of on the edge where like anybody could just fall off like at any section. And what's really cool is at the very kind of last area when you're chasing this guy down is the game kind of goes into like a top down perspective where both of you are trying to corner this guy into a corner, so it's just really, really neat trying to, cut him off at two different points while you're also sitting there with your other person, trying to do these things. And this game is so good, couch co-op. You can play online with another friend that doesn't even have the copy of the game. You can invite them if they download like the free client. But it is so much more rewarding playing it with somebody right next to you. So after that, we end up going to the hospital, where this is where now we're trying to do a little bit of Vincent's backstory. So Vincent finds out his wife is pregnant, and they're going to have their baby. So before we actually go after the main bad guy, we have to go see the mother. The best part, maybe perhaps in the entire game for me, just by individual section, is another escape sequence, the hospital escape sequence where they kind of get caught, like, hey, these guys are here, we have to go chase after them. So Leo and Vincent are kind of doing their own thing in the hospital, and this is the only time in the game where it actually goes full screen. So I would start as Vincent, and I'd be running through this like operating room, or I'd be running through a lobby, and then I'd bust through a door, but then the camera would like retract like out of the building and like move around, and then like enter another window, and then it will be Vincent's scene or Leo's scene or whoever I was just mentioning. You're just constantly just going back and forth between these moments, and just I'm not much of a movie person, but the just cinematography, I guess, of just the transitions, the full screen transitions from one person to another is so well done that I think it is one of the most exciting moments that I've had in a video game in quite some time. The best part of that whole section, I would say, is you end up fighting a bunch of cops as Leo, because there's like some hand-to-hand combat stuff. But the game basically turns into like a side-scrolling fighting game, kind of like a Streets of Rage or Final Fight, where you're just going like it literally is side-scrolling. Like you can't even go you're basically moving on a horizontal axis, and you're just like punching them and taking them down. And Leo's got like this big old fighting stance, like he's straight out of a Super Nintendo beat 'em up. And it's just so cool, like just how many new things they do, and just like one thing just doesn't overstay their welcome very much, and it's just constantly just new idea after new idea. That's just really cool. So you get out of the hospital, and you're actually going to go get a plane. You're going to go after this main bad guy. And the main bad guy's name's Harvey. I was just remembering that. So you can parachute off a plane, or you can land like miles away and walk. And walking isn't very fun. Like you go through with like a machete, and you like just cut down some plants, and you're just basically walking. But the other part is jumping out of the airplane, because you're in a parachute pretty much closer. And Leo's parachute doesn't work. So like as Vincent, you have to like go down there, and you have to like grab him and do this kind of cool sequence with them like all falling through the sky. So you end up finding Harvey. This whole section leading to Harvey is basically a third-person shooter. You pick your different guns, and it's basically like a third-person cover shooter. And one thing I actually really enjoyed about this is I kind of thought the third-person shooting and the cover mechanics were just kind of going to be not very well done, because that wasn't really the focus of this game. But definitely playing it, I would say the mechanics of shooting and cover probably work better than other third-person action games that's their entire thing, is the shooting and cover. But you end up finding Harvey, and again, another great moment to talk about is Harvey's trying to surrender himself kind of thing, but then ends up getting away, and kind of flips over this table, and both you and Leo and Vincent are on different sides of the table, and you literally at the both same time just pour bullets into him, and then in the spectacular fashion kind of thing, he falls over the back and falls out the window and into his like big pool that he's got in his mansion or whatnot. You have a bike escape afterwards, and at this point I'm just thinking like, okay, like this is pretty much like the end of the game. Like we did our thing, what we set out to do. We're done pretty much. So you end up landing, you get on the plane, you end up going back to the United States. I can't remember where at specifically. I think it might be like Los Angeles kind of area, because you ended up going down to Mexico to find Harvey. So this is where you land the plane. Leo and Vincent both get out, and the cops are right there ready to arrest both of you. But the police chief kind of walks up, looks at Leo, kind of scolds him, and then walks up to Vincent and then says, "Well done, Vincent," and hands him a gun. So this is where you find out that Vincent has been an undercover cop the entire time in the game. And Vincent kind of has a personal vendetta against not necessarily Leo, but Harvey, as Harvey and Leo were in the same location when Vincent's brother was shot. As Vincent's brother was kind of an undercover, wasn't really a police officer, but basically somebody who was going undercover to try and catch Leo and Harvey in this moment. So what ends up happening is when Leo gets sent to jail, Vincent actually volunteers to go to prison and work with Leo and try and get into, trying to get on his good side so then they could find Harvey and eliminate him. So this is really it's probably the biggest jaw-dropping moment in the game, is this is what makes the game really special in the end. So Vincent ends up kind of kidnapping Vincent. They get in a car, and the coolest part about this whole last 30 minutes of the game, and so about 4.5 hours have actually been co-op, where you're constantly there's a little bit of competitive in the mini games like the Connect 4, the wheelchair balancing, whatnot, but you're always kind of working together, and it creates this bond, not even just of Leo and Vincent and the characters, but just with the person you're playing as, and just definitely playing with the same person the whole time, the entire journey that you do. And basically what this game ends up being is a 1v1 in the end. So there's a car chase. The car ends up getting derailed. I think it ends up going into a river. Vincent gets picked up by a police helicopter, and Leo gets in a boat, and just kind of where felt like 5 minutes ago we had just taken down Harvey, just parading him with bullets and just having this great moment of we did this together. I am in a helicopter with a machine gun trying to shoot Leo in a boat. And there's really this thing that makes it so great is, I've been playing as Vincent for the last 4.5 hours, and my friend had been playing as Leo for the last 4.5 hours. It's we want to win. Leo kind of felt like he was screwed over. Vincent also kind of had his justification. And it really is I really have to kill you. And you got this personal thing against even who you're playing against. I can't lose to my friend here. The big part is you end up disabling the boat, and you basically have a 1v1 with Vincent and Leo. And they're kind of yelling at each other, and basically they both kind of turn. They both have their submachine guns and just big old health bars, and it's still split screen also, so you can kind of screen cheat, but the area is kind of big, and it's a brand new area you would never seen before, so you don't really know where your person's at. It's not in GoldenEye where you're oh, I know this part of the map, I can clearly go to that part. There's areas that okay, yeah, I can see his screen, but I really have no idea in this area where that's even at. So it doesn't work. It doesn't hinder it too much that you can screen cheat. You have a couple areas you keep going to fight back and forth, but eventually you end up on this kind of rooftop of this warehouse building, and you kind of end up almost like Metal Gear Solid 4 style with Snake and Ocelot, or Snake and Liquid Snake. You're basically just kind of fighting, and literally it was almost punching the memory. So it's Vincent would punch Leo, and then Leo would have flashbacks of things you had done earlier in the game and stuff that he's done throughout his life. But you still have the health bar going, and you both see that one of the submachine guns is still there, after you got flown out our window. And you basically kind of have a mashing square kind of mini game to basically see who can get to the gun and kill who first. And it isn't just, whoever does it fast is the winner like I would say most of the time, because the person who has more health has an easier time to get the gun. So if I had half health where my friend only had a fourth of a health, which is kind of where it ended up being, it was much easier for me to get up and grab the gun than it was for him. So this is kind of where the open-ended, not open-ended, but like multiple endings happen. And so with my ending, I was the person who ended up getting the gun, and you don't have a choice to throw the gun away or whatnot. It's as a video I was watching earlier about this, is very Metal Gear Solid 3, where you do have to pick up the gun and you do have to pull the trigger. You can't just like, hey, I'm just not gonna do it. So you end up killing your friends, or so-called friend. I end up killing Leo, and there's completely different endings for for different the outcomes. Where if Leo dies or Vincent dies, there's different endings. So my ending is with Leo dying. Vincent goes back to. Well, I should actually say this even before I get to this. You end up shooting Leo or whoever you are, and the last action in the game is a like co-op handshake where if I hold down R2, my character will extend the arm, but the circle won't be full until the other friend also holds R2, which fills out the other end of the circle. And this is just kind of the things I can see what like the game designers were doing. So like you have these 4.5 hours of playing co-op, and you're just accomplishing all these things, and the whole like last 30 minutes is just competitive, and it's like I'm trying to kill this person I've been working with the entire time. And I love that the fact that the last action in the game is another co-op moment, like a handshake. And it really just kind of ties it all back around and makes it so enjoyable. And again, so to get back to what I was mentioning, so I lived as Vincent, Leo died. Vincent shows up to Leo's family's house and basically tells the wife the news of what happened, where then Vincent leaves, and of course the wife is furious and yells, and I'm sure that's where Vincent ends up saying that, hey, I was an undercover cop maybe the whole time. The game doesn't really tell you what the conversation was. It's him kind of in the house or the mobile home that they're at and just saying we need to talk, and then the camera just kind of pulling out, and you can just kind of hear some of the yelling in the background and just kind of the body language of Vincent walking out of the house being yelled at. And then in the other ending, I just went ahead and looked up online where Leo lives and Vincent dies. Leo actually escapes with his family, and there's like, they even show the like police officer. It's not military, but like kind of an officer funeral for Vincent. And basically, like, again, it's probably just because of who I played as, is that like I look at Leo as the bad guy, even though the friend I played with might even see like Leo was the good guy. He was in the right to do what he did. But of course, me playing as Vincent for the last like 5 hours, I felt like I was in the right. Like I was the officer. I was the person who was going to take this down. And this is like I was going to, win basically. So it really is like, depending who's playing, like, so somebody's going to get a good ending and somebody's going to get a bad ending. That's really just kind of what you're fighting for. And I haven't, talked to the friend, I guess, particularly about this, but I can't see where Leo dying as my friend and Vincent as me living, I can't see that being like, yep, that was the good ending. So there's really not like this is the good ending, this is the bad ending. It really just depends on who you were playing as. So that's really a way out that I'm just so happy about this game. And there's a lot of times where I play games and I kind of have that, I can't remember the exact term, but like that kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but basically like that first impression kind of thing where you see something for the first time, or you go see a movie and you're like, wow, that was like the greatest movie of all time. But then kind of like the more you think about it, you're kind of just like, well, I mean, yeah, it was cool. But actually, like in hindsight, it wasn't like as great as I thought it would be. Where like you would see a brand new movie, it's like, oh, that's the greatest movie of all time. But with this game, I feel like the more I think about this game, I think the more I actually enjoy it. So the more and more I keep thinking about it, the more I'm like, yeah, man, this game was really good. And it's been about maybe a month, maybe about 5-6 weeks even, that I actually ended up playing this game. And this is, I was originally wanting to do like a little talk like this, but then eventually I just kind of put it on the back burner and I wasn't planning on it. But again, it's just more and more thinking about this game. I was like, man, this game is really good. And it's one of those experiences that it's almost one of those must plays that you have to play. And I love that it can only be played co-op. You can do like little sections with 2 controllers. Like, if I was just playing by myself and I had 2 controllers right next to me, like there's like little sections you can like, okay, you go as one character and then you catch up with the other one. But you cannot get through, probably majority of the chapters, maybe even any of the chapters in the end by just playing it solo with 2 controllers. And there's been games that have been co-op only, mainly just kind of in other modes. And the one I think about a lot is the Portal 2 co-op mode. But this game, you can only play co-op, and there's no AI character there. And I think that was really a gutsy move by the developer Hazelight and even the game director Joseph Fares, that they could have just been like, okay, yeah, like we might get this more accessible and we're going to actually put in an AI character, whoever you choose. But I really don't, I think it would have a little bit of effect, but it does not have the same effect that having just 2 real human people sitting on a couch playing this game can do, rather than, okay, well, I'm ready to go to this next section, and then like the other character like running up and basically just being a robot or an AI. So I'm so happy that they were able to take that risk and do that. And this is an EA Originals game, which like Joseph Fares had actually talked about in an interview. It was actually at the Game Awards where he had his kind of infamous moment that, EA is basically giving me like completely a lot of funding and freedom to do whatever, because EA is that kind of, you would assume like that kind of company, and I almost say it's maybe even the same for any big publisher, but sometimes you think maybe even EA a little bit more so, that like, we're going to put out this game for $30 that can only be played co-op. Like, no, like they could be like, hey, we have all these statistics that show, hey, we have to have a single player game, there's all these people that play single player games, make the other character an AI. But they didn't. They were allowed to do this, and I think that's what makes this game super special. So yeah, then in there, game's only about 5 hours. I beat it in, I think it ended up being three sessions with a friend. I think we did 2 hours for 2 nights, and then we finished it off in the last hour. Yeah, I just can't say enough about this game. It's definitely one of those games that I wish, people talk about, like, I wish I could erase my memory and go back in time and experience this for the first time. This is definitely one of those games. And I played it on PlayStation 4, and I've even talked with another friend. I was like, he had kind of shown interest, like, yeah, like I saw this game, it looks actually kind of cool. I'm like, I will play this game again with you. If you want. And I would, because me playing as Vincent, I would definitely, if I replayed it with him on like Xbox or regardless whatever console, I would probably play as Leo this time to like see how little sections change gameplay wise, because there's definitely things like you aren't going to experience if you only play if you play as Vincent. There's going to be Leo things you are not going to have. The only thing I just wanted to mention lastly is just maybe a little bit of presentation things. Had some frame rate drops. I was just playing on a launch PlayStation 4, and I do believe this game is like technically what they say PlayStation 4 Pro support or Xbox One X enhanced, and I think that could probably alleviate some of those moments. But there's definitely moments where like kind of the escape scenes where like we're trying to run away from the cops, that Leo and Vincent would bust through a door, and then the game would just kind of stop for like a couple seconds and then have to load. And that was pretty annoying, but definitely I would say the bigger moments that were kind of what I had mentioned the seminal moments, I guess, that make this game what it is. It wasn't really chugging or whatnot. Voice acting is pretty good. It's not great. There's a lot of delivery, a lot of different characters to talk to. I would say Leo is probably the weakest of the two between him and Vincent. Sometimes Leo just says things, and I understand like there's people who talk monotone, but I feel he is that performance is actually too monotone. Like it's almost like he's not even invested in the line, and maybe that's the way he's trying to read it or whatnot. But sometimes he has like enunciation and words to say with more color. But then there's sometimes where he's just talking to somebody, and then it's just just one note, and that kind of takes it out of me a little bit. After enough games that I've played, with all of these kind of huge, great presentations. And I think it's a really great looking game too. It doesn't go for the ultra realism. You're not seeing like the individual skin or individual hairs on his arms or whatever. So like in that, it's if anything, it actually looks like a little cartoony maybe. Which I mean, I guess maybe not, but it definitely has a little more of those like solid colors rather than like, oh, you can see all the pigment colors in his face or whatnot. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about A Way Out. Absolutely enjoyed playing this. I mean, I would say like, oh, if you haven't played it yet, play it. Which I don't want to say that right now because I want you to actually play the game before listening to this. So definitely try it out. Try. I mean, I guess I would even say try it with a friend is what I should say. If you're somebody, and again, I kind of like making these videos for people who have already completed games but want to hear people talk about them a little bit more, kind of in a spoiler sense, not just kind of in a review kind of sense. But yeah, I would definitely recommend, even if you have another friend that's like maybe heard of this game or like had like, oh, I don't know, I was kind of interested in that or whatnot, and you still have it. I mean, absolutely, I recommend introducing this game to more and more people. Because I think this is definitely a special game that I think a lot of people are going to enjoy. And my one hope for this game is that I think it's already selling pretty well, because I think like Hazelight, the developer, or even EA said that it sold more in like 2 days or 1 day than they expected it to sell in its entire lifetime. I hope when Game of the Year awards come down, where even like the Game Awards, where it kind of aggregates a lot of them, I really hope when they have the category for best multiplayer, when they put in things like Call of Duty, Black Ops 4, or Battlefield 5 or whatnot, I would love for A Way Out to be there. And I don't know, because maybe they just call it co-op or whatnot, but right now this game just does so many new ideas that I think this has to be like the best multiplayer game of 2018 so far. And I would maybe even reckon to say maybe even the generation so far. It is really a special game, I think, that I think people are really overlooking, but I think there's definitely kind of that community that like actually like really realizes like this game is really special. But yeah, hopefully this game, isn't forgotten. I hope, when in the video game industry, there's always new games coming out, so things kind of last for like a week, and that's kind of about it. Every once in a while you'll get a bigger game like God of War that people talk about for like 3 weeks, but after that it's just kind of on to the next game or whatever's coming out. It's not really until November, December when people start talking about Game of the Year, when people realize like, hey, remember that game like A Way Out that came out in April or March or whenever it came out. That I hope that it definitely gets more recognition. So again, just want to say thank you for listening to this A Way Out spoiler chat. I definitely plan on having more videos of kind of spoilers in the future. And thank you for listening. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.